Hi there. Welcome to Two Jewish. It's a podcast for two Jewish women with seemingly nothing in common. Well, we're going to come together to explore faith, resilience, personal growth, and self love. And my name is Shternie, and I am a very Orthodox, maybe not so very, but I'm an Orthodox Jewess, Jewish woman. I come from Chabad, which is a Hasidic dynasty back in Eastern Europe, which is now all over the world.
And I'm Lisa. And I don't know, really. I mean, I guess I'm Reformed. I was told my whole life that I was Reformed. I was born and raised in Philadelphia, told my whole life I was Reformed, but the idea of my religion was a good brisket and some potato latkes for Hanukkah. So we are going to dive into we're going to dive into everyday issues actually, and then just bring in our own perspectives to help everybody have clarity and walk away feeling fulfilled with their heart and their soul.
Mm. And we're going to add in a lot of warmth because we love each other, and humor and authenticity, and of course, a cup of
Cup
tea.
of tea. I love
Oh,
it. What kind of tea do you got today, Shternie?
today it looks like a chamomile tea. Oh,
Okay,
no,
well,
no, no. This is raspberry. Sorry.
gotcha. Okay. So,
Oh,
Shternie, I want to jump right in. You ready?
yes.
Okay. So, I was at the movies last night and I said to my girlfriend, hey, I'm moving and I'm thinking of having a kosher home. And instantly, without even pausing, she said, why would you do that? Like, it's so hard. And it kind of like set me back a little bit. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I get that. But I guess my concern was why do people go from something sounds hard, so it's hard, or something's different, so it's hard? What's up with that?
Mm. Well, that's interesting. I mean, have you done hard things in your life?
Me, me, the queen of hard. Yeah.
I think that that's an interesting thing. Like, why do people shy away from things that are hard? What does hard mean? Does it mean challenging? Does it mean impossible? Like, what does hard mean? What do you think she meant by that?
I think that she meant because to follow up with that, then she said, well, you can never go to a restaurant that's not kosher. You can never, so there's two things here. When you share your ideas with people, sometimes they go right into the negative. And I always remind myself, which I think we could remind the listeners too, that when people say any response or give their opinion, it's always from their head and their perspective. So maybe in her mind, change is hard, something new is hard, right? And so I think you said, like, why do people think that why do you think that it's hard? I think sometimes people don't like to change, and change equates, for some people, change is hard. So if I'm going from eating a cheeseburger, which is not kosher, and allowing it in my home, that's a change. So I have to now change the rules and my habits. And then when we have to change our habits, we have to change our thinking, and it takes time. It's not like you just jump into the pool and you go, today I'm going to eat. Now I'm going to have to think about it. I'm not bringing pork into my home. But by the way, Sterny, I did
Yeah.
stop bringing pork into my home a long time ago, just so you know.
Wow. Well, it's interesting you just said about jumping into the pool because sometimes you need to be pushed into the pool or push yourself to take that leap and jump into the pool to make the change happen. But I think that there is something that happens in your head before you make that jump. And that is that I'm going to take a leap. And I know that the only way that I'm going to make that change is to be brave and courageous and jump right into the pool. So you're thinking about that before you actually make that jump. But when you make the jump, you know that you're facing your fear. You know you're facing the hard thing about getting used to the water, or am I going to have make it do a belly flop? And you're just facing the fact that that might just happen, and you're going to take that risk. And sometimes that's the only way to make the change. But I do think that there is some thought process that goes into even making that leap of faith, and that is even the decision that you're going to make that jump. So that's just what I wanted to say about that jump into the pool idea.
I love that
Um,
concept. I was
mm,
just thinking, I love that concept, Shirley, but wouldn't you agree? Maybe standing by the pool is where the most conflict happens, right? Like you're like, do I want to jump or do I want to step my toe in? Do I want to go like a little bit at a time, or do I want to like jump all in? So I think when we're making change, when we're making choices in our life, or thinking about whatever, I've been divorced twice, right? So whatever we're thinking about, it's like, do I want to? And then there's this whole list of, I don't know about a list, but for me, it's always been a thought process of, well, what happens if I do X or what happens if I do Y? Like you kind of think it through, flush it out, if you will.
Right. Well, I too have been divorced only once, and I hope never to be again. I'm married, thank God now. But even then, I remember people were saying, "Are you sure you want to do this?" It's like you're going to be jumping from the fire pan into the fire. So which one's better? Obviously, they're trying to say that neither is better. They both come with their risks. So there is a certain amount of thinking that we do before we make a change, but ultimately, we can't foresee every single thing that's going to happen. We can't. But we can think something through, and then it comes to a point where you are going to be standing next to the pool and making that jump. At some point, there is that you cannot prepare for everything. So when you're standing there and thinking, okay, should I eat the cheeseburger or not? Or should I keep kosher or not? There are a lot of things that you can take in stages. For example, jumping into the pool can be done in stages. You can poke your toe in. Then you can take some water and make your legs wet. You can do, to a certain point, you can prepare yourself. But then when it comes to actually jumping in, there's that jump. So the same thing with keeping kosher. You can break things down into bite-sized pieces, but ultimately there's going to be that leap. And then there's going to be that day you're going out with your friends, whether they're Jewish or not, and you're keeping kosher, and you have to somehow be in this party and not be the only one eating, or maybe you're only eating a salad that you brought along for yourself, and you have to take that leap and face it. Now sometimes you can forewarn some of these things, and sometimes you're just going to be up against that. It's going to take courage. And sometimes when you know that what you're doing is right, which is the thinking part of things, is understanding, is what I'm doing right, is keeping kosher right, is it a good thing to do? How am I going to face the challenges of keeping
But
kosher?
but even before we get to is it right? I think so. There's a couple of things here, right? We're talking about
I mean,
dumping.
is it right for you?
Right. We're talking about jumping in the pool. We can also decide we don't like the water. We
Hmm.
can also say this is too cold and I want to get out and get a towel and wrap ourselves in the known versus the unknown. Because people do that a lot too, right? They go, that's why we used the example of divorce earlier. That's why some people say, up, I'm going to leave my husband. They get separated and then they go back, right? Because that water was too cold for them and they got to chill and they wanted to wrap themselves up in a blanket. They get all warmed up and then it's the same crap and then they leave it again, right? And so, is it right? I think, is it right for you? Right. But I think it's for me, I always say when making any decision in life, big, small, whatever, it's the why behind everything. So like, why would I want to be kosher? Like, why would it matter to me? Right. So, and for the listeners, this didn't just happen like overnight, right? So I think that what I've learned, so I've always so when I was married to my second husband, my second ex-husband, I said to him, I want to be kosher. And he was like, absolutely not. And he didn't want to do it. And he was Jewish. But now I'm finding that to me, it's keeping, it's like a practice. Does that make sense? It's like, it's something that I want to do because I don't know if I like the word right, but it works for me because for me, I will feel closer and more committed to my spirituality and my God and my religion.
Well, let me quantify that. When I say right, I don't mean right universally. I mean right for you.
Right.
That's where I'm going right now. Right. Right now.
There's a
That's
lot of
what
rights in that sentence.
that's a lot of rights. And we have to have courage. It's very interesting because I teach young children, and I coach teenagers, and I teach older people who are over 20, 30, 40, 50.
Right.
And I sometimes see the same thread running through all of them. And so, which is interesting, like it's about the challenges that we have when we're 5 or 8 can follow us all the way through till we're 65. Sometimes it's a challenge you have for life, right? But it's that idea of developing courage, developing that ability to face a challenge and go and face it and really take the courage and take that leap. And not in a foolish way, not blindly. Like you said, you want to think about things, you want to understand the why, but you don't necessarily have to understand the million understanding. It's like the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave an example to somebody who was also wanting to keep kosher, and but they weren't sure about this and they want to find out about that. And the Rebbe was saying, well, would you go to college to and go through elementary school and high school and go through college and really understand the benefits of eating before you eat? Well, if you did that, you die before you eat anything, just to understand the benefit of every single food before you eat so that you make sure that it is really healthy for you and that this is the right thing for you. So would you do that? No, of course you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't go and try to find out every single little thing that you can till the nth degree about eating before you ate. You wouldn't survive. You would die before you could find
But
all
you
that
could,
out.
but you could educate yourself
Yeah.
about, and
But
so
what I'm
you raise an interest. Go ahead. Go ahead.
But what I'm saying is you wouldn't stop yourself from eating until you found all that out. You'd still go and eat some things that you're not 100% sure whether, is organic food really so good for me or is it not
Right.
so good for me? You have a certain limited understanding about what organic food benefits are, and then you would just go and eat. So you have a certain limited understanding about the benefits of oranges and apples and eating protein with starch, etc. But you're not going to stop yourself from eating anything until you find all that out. So it's
Right.
the same with kosher or anything else in life. You're not going to find out every single thing about the benefits of swimming before you learn how to swim. You're going to learn whatever you can learn, and then there is a certain percentage of leap of faith or just jumping in and taking the courage to do that. And so what I see is that this issue can run through all our lives from when we're very young till we're very old. And as a teacher and as an educator and a parent, I have seen that the thing that I can help the most with in this area that I can help people with is to develop courage. I had once a child in
Well,
a
how do you do that? So how do the listeners do it? It's funny because I have carriage. I always say I'm like kind of balls to the wall. I'll do whatever. But put me on a mountain and all of a sudden, and the mountain's really high. Like I'm talking about a physical mountain here in Arizona, right? Put me out there and all of a sudden I look down, I'm like, whoa, 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 I gotta rest for a minute and then I can keep going or not. And I turn back. So how do you develop that muscle? I have courage when it comes to moving. I have courage when it change, etc. But maybe out on the mountain, I don't have as much courage. So is it possible, you think? I mean, I think it's possible to have, we can all have courage, but in different parts of our life. Like and to me, when I say to somebody, "Oh, I'm thinking about going kosher," that that to me isn't a level of courage. It's interesting that you brought it back to courage because to me it's okay, so I'll learn the dietary rules. And to your point, if I go out, that's the hardest part. That's what I'm most nervous about, Shternie, is like I like to go out to eat. There's not a lot of restaurants you can go out to eat, right? But it could be good for my pocketbook at the same time, right? And then it could be good for my waistline. So I'm thinking I better hurry up and go kosher because it might be a really good thing. You know what I mean? So how do you develop how do you develop those courageous muscles, I guess?
So, two things I wanted to mention about that is number one, the idea of the whole mitzvah, the whole commandment for a Jew to keep kosher. And by the way, not non-Jews. This is not for non-Jews. They're allowed to eat whatever they want to, except they're not allowed to eat from the limb of a living animal. So that's another discussion. But otherwise, kosher is just a commandment that Hashem, God, has told the Jewish people that we have to keep. Okay. So it belongs in a certain category of commandments
So
because there
so when you
be
say commandment, for someone who doesn't know, just explain how we use the commandments as a way to live, right? That's like
right,
our
right,
guidebook.
right. So the Torah is our Bible, and in the Torah there are 613 commandments. Some of the things Hashem, God, has said you should do, some of the things He said you should not do. There are positive and negative, so to speak, commandments. And when commandments, it's a loose term for something Hashem has told us that we have to do. Like I keep Shabbos, I keep the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week holy. That's one of the
Mhm.
commandments, for example. And keeping kosher is another one. And keeping kosher is in the category of commandments that we have not been given the reason why we're doing it by God. Okay, so there are three categories, which we can talk about the three categories, but one of the categories is uh, is a category of mitzvahs, commandments that we have not been given the reason for why we're keeping it. So Hashem has not said, "Oh, keep kosher and your pocketbook will be lighter. Keep kosher and you'll be slimmer, or you'll be healthier, or you'll be fatter, or I don't know, whatever." There's not been given a reason.
So it's our interpretation of what it is.
Well, we can think about all kinds of reasons, but we don't really know the reason why Hashem has told us to keep kosher.
When you
So when,
say Hashem has told us, like, what
hmm,
does that mean? Like, what did he, like, for me, it's like, oh, who spoke to God, and where did
right,
God say you have to keep like,
right.
did he, and who
So,
was taking notes for these 613 commandments, right?
this is verging on another conversation which we can have, but 3,300 years ago, when the Jewish people stood by Mount Sinai at Har Sinai, Hashem gave us the Torah. Hashem gave us through Moses, through Moshe. Hashem gave us all the 613 mitzvahs that we are to keep. And one of them is keeping kosher. So when we keep kosher, we're really keeping kosher ultimately only because Hashem said so. So it sounds a little bit blind. And so you're not really going to have a good reason why. You can start off with a reason, but ultimately the real reason why we're keeping kosher is just because God told us to, which is a real acceptance of God. So you can decide that you are going to keep kosher because it's giving you some benefits of being able to not spend so much money and all that. But that was just an aside because that's not talking about the courage bit.
Right.
So there are some things you said you've been able to do in life, and you've had the courage to do them. And the truth is, maybe it didn't demand courage from you. Oopsie.
That's
Uh,
okay. That's okay. Hey, say hi to your sister.
hi there.
Hi, sister.
This is a real podcast. This is a real thing. Yeah. So I'm going to come very close to the screen right now.
Oh God, I'm so excited because I get to see you even closer. So I think this is a great conversation. I think what kind of do a quick recap is when we, there's a thing in Shternie. I've seen this in life. I've heard it on in life, and I've seen it on social media that says like, don't tell people what you want to do, just do it, so to speak. And maybe this is an example of don't
Yeah.
tell people what you want to do all the time, because what we find, or I have found, is that people are like, whoa, it's too hard. I would never do it. And that right there is what I think is the issue. You want to do something, do it. If you want to do something and you want to research it, right? Because there's a lot of research I've been doing. You got to get the courage. But I also think what's really important here is that people step back and ask themselves, hey, why do I want to do this? Right. And reach out to people who know what it takes. So ask people who keep kosher, what
Mm,
does that life look like and feel? And guess what, Shternie, I also know there's people, and I think they're friends of yours too. But I think there's people that keep kosher in their home, but then when they go outside, they eat at a restaurant, they eat whatever they want. So does that make it, I don't want to say, does that make you a bad Jew, a good Jew? There's no, we're not judging anybody here about like what they practice. But
mm.
I guess what it comes down to, Sterney, as you always say, you got to do what works for you,
Right. You've
right?
got to do what you're ready for.
What
You
you're
might
ready for. That's it, what you're ready for.
Right. You might have an ultimate goal, and you do need to break things down into manageable bits. I think that's what I would tell our listeners is that let's say you have just a general goal and you want to look, and research and see what it's all about, talk to people like you say, but break it down into smaller bits so that you can ultimately get to that goal. And along the way, you might find that you hit a plateau and you're staying at a certain stage for a long time, and that's fine because human beings are not, we're not exactly regulated. We have our times where it takes more time to really let something soak in. And the other thing is, we can. It's really important for a person to have a good mentor in life in general. And I'm not talking about a therapist. I'm not talking about a psychologist or a doctor. I'm talking about just a mentor, somebody who you look up to that sets a good example that you can ask advice from and you can talk to them. You can take their advice or not, but hopefully it's somebody that you would look
I
up
love
to
that.
enough.
You can
Yeah,
take their
somebody you
advice
would
or
look up
not.
to enough to try to really consider what they're advising you. And then you can talk over these really important decisions in life and see how to go about doing them.
Right.
Um, but if you break things down into more manageable bits, it's going to be easier for you to accomplish your goal. And it could be like you say, somebody wants to start keeping kosher by maybe they eat out, they're just not having pork in the restaurant. Maybe they restrict themselves to just fish and salad. And maybe the next stage is that they don't, that they only keep kosher in the house. Or, there are so many different stages. I
Right.
would say talk to a rabbi about the different stages you might feel ready for. And jumping into something might be the right thing for you, but maybe taking things slowly is the jumping in for you.
I
Everyone's
love that. Yeah, I love that. I'm the girl that likes to jump. I like to go into the pool. I like to just go in the center of the pool, the deep end, and just see. I guess that's probably the piece of the excitement for me. And as I've gotten older, I realized like, okay, I can kind of walk a little slowly into the pool. But this is just another piece of my journey and of really embracing my Judaism. I've always been Jewish, but um I would say like the last, 6 years ago, well, maybe it's seven. I keep saying six. So I got to get the date. It's probably 7 years ago when I was in Israel. It just changed my life. And every Friday I do Shabbat dinner or I go to synagogue. So I think this is just another step in my journey. So I think that we're all on a journey, whether it's studying Judaism, we're all on constant journeys ourselves. And I think that's important to remember that it's your choice, right? You get to jump in the pool, you get to talk to a mentor, a life coach, there's so much research, there's so much resources out there, right? It's so easy now. Go online, get tips, whatever. So I think
and
this
and
was
and I would say also you've got to put a time limit on it because sometimes you could be stuck in research forever. Some people are going from degree, but they're never actually doing anything with the degree. So you have to put a time limit on some of your research also and say, look, okay, enough is enough. I'm getting way stuck in all the research, and I'm actually not doing anything. And that comes down to the world we live in, which is called the world of doing in Kabbalistic terms. There are four worlds according to Kabbalah. There are four worlds. And the fourth world, which is the lowest of all four, is the world we live in, which is called the world of doing, because this is the only world where action happens and action counts. So we do have to think, we do have to talk, but then ultimately it's the action that counts. So it's good to look and to research and to understand, but sometimes you have to be in the middle of the road. You can't just be either there or there. You don't want to do something without thinking, and then the other end, you don't want to be sitting and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking about it either. It's got to be a middle of the road, and ultimately it does have to end with some kind of action.
I love it. I love it. It's awesome. I'm so not middle of the road, so that's great for me. I think we're like so cool. It's so cool we have these conversations every week because it's like your
Yeah.
perspective, my perspective. So I think we should take some action and wrap up the show. How's that sound to you?
Let's wrap up and get some action going to this week. Yes.
Yeah, so if
Okay.
you're thinking about making a change this week, remember some of our tips. You
Mhm.
can go middle of the road or you can jump in and get really cold. Why do I assume the water is cold? I don't
Don't
know.
make assumptions ever.
Yeah, maybe the water's hot. Maybe you're jumping into a pool here in Arizona because it's hot.
Good.
All right, so till next time, great. It's great. It's been great fun, Shternie, right?
Absolutely, Lisa. I love you to bits. And you're not here much longer in Arizona, so you better jump into a pool real quick.
Few more. All right, have a great week, everybody.
Yeah, bye everyone.